Whenever I became menopausal myself a few years ago, I really began to study what was going to happen with my body because I'm that kind of person. And what I realized was that the way I had been eating myself personally for years and the way I had been teaching the women in my organization to eat was exactly how women should be eating in menopause. So I discovered something completely astounding whenever I began to study menopause, and that was how the body rediverts energy to fat stores in order to create more estrogen. So here is what happens whenever a woman is in menopause. Whenever your estrogen levels start to decline because your ovaries are not creating or making as much estrogen, your body's not ready to give up on estrogen yet. So it turns to its secondary source of estrogen, which is fat cells. The fat cells around the stomach are actually very estrogenic. So whenever you start to enter menopause and your natural estrogen levels that are created by your ovaries start to decline, your body is not ready to give up on estrogen yet. So it starts to create insulin resistance within your cells to divert more energy to fat store so it can produce more fat cells so it will have a store of estrogen if and when it needs it. Whenever you eat, food goes into your stomach, and then it's passed through into the small intestine to be broken down to be passed into the bloodstream. Whenever the food goes into the bloodstream, insulin is released by the pancreas in a flood into the bloodstream to store the sugar from the food that you've just eaten. So it stores glucose and converts it to glycogen. The organs that utilize glycogen the most are the muscles. So that's the first place that your body wants to store glucose in order to convert it to glycogen. Normally, whenever glycogen stores are depleted within the muscles and you eat, insulin is released into the bloodstream, insulin goes around, and it's basically like it knocks on the muscle cells. And it's like, you know, do you need some glycogen? Do you need some glycogen? Do you need some glycogen? And normally the GLUT4 receptors on the muscle will trigger the surface of the muscle cell to open. The body can put in the glucose and the body converts it to glycogen, and that is how you get energy. In menopause, the body creates insulin resistance within the cells so that your muscles cannot absorb all of the glucose. So insulin is flying around the blood, carrying the glucose, knocking on all the cells, and rather than the cell doors opening to accept the glucose, your body closes the cell doors. It only opens like a little portion, like it only opens the cell door like a little bit and takes a little bit in and then slams it shut again. The reason it does this is so that the glucose remains in the blood and your body starts to have a little bit of a freak attack because your blood sugar is high and it does not want your blood sugar to be high. So as soon as it realizes that it cannot store the glucose in your muscle tissue, it sends it to the liver. The liver converts the glucose to triglycerides and sends it straight to fat store. So now your body has a nice little cushioning of fat around your middle that it can break down for estrogen if it feels that your estrogen stores are declining. But here's the thing, even if your estrogen stores are declining, your body still has enough estrogen to perform all of its functions. It doesn't actually break down the fat stores to produce more estrogen, it just keeps them there in case it needs to. So that is why women put on weight, especially around their middle in menopause. It's because of insulin resistance. Now, what can you do about it? What I realized years ago was the way that I eat and the way that I teach the women in my company to eat is actually the exact diet that women should be eating in menopause. Because whenever you eat a food that is very high on the glycemic index, it means that it has loads and loads of sugar, loads of glucose. So your blood sugar rises very rapidly. So you have a lot of glucose in your blood, which needs to be stored. If your body cannot store the glucose, because obviously there's insulin resistance in the cells, there's a massive amount of it that is sent to the liver and then subsequently to fat store. So your body stores more fat. If you eat foods that are very low on the glycemic index, such as beans, lentils, and cruciferous vegetables, which is the main bulk of the food that we recommend in our programs, the blood sugar doesn't rise rapidly. You get a slow drip of energy because it takes a long time to break down the food because they're so filled with fiber, they're not broken down very quickly. You get a slow drip of energy, and that slow drip of energy, because you're moving around during the day, you're training, you're maybe working out in the gym, your body needs the fuel. Your muscles need the glycogen. So because you're only getting a slow drip of energy, there's nothing left over to send to fat store. So it bypasses the insulin resistance that your body naturally creates. Your blood sugar doesn't rise enough for there to be enough sugar left over to send to fat store, which means that you don't put weight on around your middle.